All right. Hello, everybody. How are we doing? If you can see and hear me, can you drop in the chat who, if anyone, you met during the networking event and who you connected with and what you learned from them? I'm just going to give everyone a number of more minutes to come in. Jeff met some awesome folks. Sarah, the networking, make sure you're clicking the right link. Remember, there's a different link for the networking and the webinars. So if you couldn't get in, it might have been the wrong link, but just check it out again later. Oliver met some awesome people and just wish they had more time. Yes, there's going to be more throughout the week. I know we always need more time. Michaela says it was great. I had so much fun talking to everyone. Marlena had met some awesome people and wish we had more time to chat. Howdy from the Ozarks, Jim. So good to see you. Yeah, Sarah, no worries. If you go to the hub, there is a second link that you can check out. No worries, everybody. If you missed the link, don't worry. We have 3 more amazing networking sessions this week. Okay, I am going to go ahead and dive in. It's so great to hear that so many of you had some awesome time at the networking event. I believe we'll have a bunch of questions today, so I want to make sure that we have enough time to do all of those. And I saw someone was saying that their cat was interrupting them. And I don't know if you can hear my cat in the background, but she sounds like she's going to have a lot to say on this session as well. So perhaps we will all be dealing with cat interruptions. Okay, so we will go ahead and jump in. In this session, we are going to be talking about how to use Prowritingaid to improve your fantasy manuscript. So if you are new to Prowritingaid and you are thinking about using it to work on your fantasy writing or any other type of writing that you do, this is the session for you. We are going to do a deep dive into the software and talk all about how to use it to improve your writing. So here's a brief agenda of what we will cover today. First, we're going to dive into what Prowritingaid actually is and all of its capabilities, because I've seen a number of questions come through about that. Then we're going to talk specifically about how to use Prowritingaid as a fantasy writer. I am a fantasy writer myself, and I am going to give you some peeks into the specific reports that I use and how I set them up exactly when I'm writing fantasy. And then I will also talk about how I do it for other writing I go through as well. And then finally, we will leave lots of time at the end to answer any questions about the software. I just want to highlight at the top that we do, again, have the 40% off discount going on for yearly and annual subscriptions. We also have a $20 monthly option if you want to just get started and test out the software. It's really, really helpful for us. For you to upgrade to premium, it just allows us to keep bringing these events to you and allows us to keep delivering them to you for free, which is really our goal. One other quick piece of housekeeping before we go through. For this session, if you could please drop your questions into the Q&A button, that will help me keep track of them as we go so that I can answer them by the time we get to the Q&A. As everybody knows, the chat moves super, super fast. So in order for me to keep track of them, if you can please use the Q&A button. Michelle is here with me and she might be redirecting some of you to the Q&A just to make sure that I can see those questions and they haven't just whirled right by. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. So first of all, what even is Prowritingaid? So Prowritingaid is so hard to describe in one sentence, but I like to think about it as a grammar checker, style editor, and writing mentor all rolled up into one package that works everywhere on your computer and helps just improve your writing. It gives you clear, easy steps so that you can share your ideas with confidence. And it's the only platform that offers world-class grammar and style checking combined with more in-depth reports to help you strengthen your writing. One of the reasons that I find it so difficult to describe Prowritingaid is because, like, typically when I talk about it, you know, to my family or to anyone who asks, like, what is your job? What do you do? I talk about how Prowritingaid is, like, at its base, it's kind of like a spelling and grammar check you get in something like Microsoft Word, but it goes so far beyond that. And I'll give you a quick example before I get into the software. So one of my bad habits as a writer is using passive voice. It's something that I have been doing my entire life. I think it stemmed from wanting to hit word counts as a kid in college and university, and wanting to say things and sound smarter. I always thought my sentence constructions had to be more difficult than they actually do. But passive voice is not actually incorrect. It is grammatically correct. And so if I put, I can write every single sentence in passive voice in Microsoft Word and it won't tell me anything about it. ProWritingAid, on the other hand, fixes that for you. So ProWritingAid finds errors, it finds grammar and spelling errors, but it also finds those errors that aren't actually errors. So things like passive voice, things like words that are overused, places where your sentences are too long and wordy, which is another thing that I am guilty of, places where you have repeated yourself over and over again. All those things that are so hard for you to do as a writer, because as writers, it's so difficult for us to assess our own, particularly our own copy. So ProWritingAid, it does all of those things. It finds your grammar errors, it finds your spelling errors, but it goes so much far beyond that to actually improving your writing and kind of the quality of your writing, in addition to just finding those places where you've made mistakes. And I will also say, one of the biggest benefits to me as somebody who's been writing professionally for over a decade is that it not only catches my mistakes and suggests improvements while I'm writing, but it also just teaches me so much. And it's really helped me figure out my own bad habits as a writer so that I can stop those and make sure that I am addressing them kind of as I'm going. So all that being said, let's just go ahead and dive into the platform, because I can talk all about it, but I think it's much easier when we kind of see it actually happening. So here is a mock-up of the tool, but I'm actually just going to go ahead and go into it because I think that's the easiest way to see. So I am using ProWritingAid's web editor right now. So a couple quick things to know about ProWritingAid before we get started. I am going to mainly be in the web editor today. But that being said, ProWritingAid, particularly ProWritingAid Premium, has many, many ways that you can use it. So I'll also show you the Chrome extension and the Google Docs add-in today. But one of the best features about ProWritingAid is that it works where you write. So you don't just have to use the web editor, which I'm in, you can use it all over. So this is what the web editor looks like. And you can do multiple things from the web editor. You can either just type in here, which is something that I sometimes do. I can just use it as a word processor and start to type like this. So you could write your entire document in here. You could also upload a document. So if you have a Word document or something else in your computer, you can click upload here and upload it. This is actually the text recording from, it's going to be actually too long. I probably shouldn't have done this, but this is our chat recording from our write-in before. So you can upload documents like this. So you can upload text documents, you can upload Word documents, you can upload a number of different file types. So you can do that. You can also copy and paste into ProWritingAid, or you can pick up a sample. So I'm going to put in a fiction sample right now so that we have some text to work with. So once you have text in ProWritingAid, whether you've written it in there, whether you've uploaded it, or whether you've copied and pasted it, you have a number of things to do. I'm going to show you the real-time report first of all. So the real-time report, give me a second, let me reload it. Okay, so this is what it looks like when the real-time report is on. You'll start to see that we have a number of different types of suggestions highlighted in different colors here on the real-time report. So the real-time report is, as it sounds, a report that gives you feedback in real time. It tells you 4 kind of basic types of errors, and it gives it to you as you're writing. So the 4 errors that come up in the real-time report are spelling errors, grammar mistakes, style mistakes, and then also passive voice errors. So you can see I have the real-time report in here, and you can see basically that I have a number of different suggestions coming through. So the kind of basic mechanism is that it works very similarly to your grammar style check in Microsoft Word. So if I see an underlined suggestion here, I can basically highlight over it. I have a number of different choices. I can choose the right one, and then it automatically fixes it in my text. So that is a very, very simple example of a spelling error that we have. But you can see we will also have different types of errors in the real-time report. So one of those types is a style error like redundancy. So bright and brilliant is kind of a redundancy. You're almost saying the same thing twice. So you'll come in here and the real-time report can highlight this type of information for you. You can select the word you want, and then it'll automatically remove the word that you don't want from there. It'll also find errors like, weaker adjectives or weaker verbs. So instead of saying very cold, it might suggest that you use a stronger adjective like freezing. So all of these things are here in the real-time report. This happens as you're writing, real-time happens in real time as you're typing. So if I were to add more text here at the end, it would add more text there as well. Now you can turn this report on and off. And I'll talk about a little bit later how I kind of make that happen in my own fiction writing. But basically, if you turn it on, it'll start to analyze the text and show you the errors. If not, you can turn them off. Now, another thing that you'll notice from this main screen over here are the goals. So the goals are customizable based on your document type. And this is one of the best things about Prowritingaid. It will give you custom goals based on what you're writing. So it can really, really support you and give specific suggestions for every single type of document that you have. So this is kind of a general fiction document right now. So you'll see I have suggestions related to grammar, style, and spelling. You'll also notice I have some specific document suggestions related to fiction writing. So pacing, so dialogue tags. These are things that will not happen as much in something like an academic or business writing document. So these will disappear if I change my document type. So you can see, again, goals are kind of customizable. I'll go into them in a little bit more detail in just a second, but basically you can come in here, you can change your document type, and you'll get custom goals. So you'll see now that we are in an academic document, we no longer have goals related to dialogue because academic documents typically don't have dialogue in this or abstracts in this way. If I switched to an email, I would have, again, you can start to see different suggestions in here. So I can say things like business jargon, right? I'm not going to have business jargon as much as a goal in a fiction document. So I don't have that as a suggestion when I'm going back to fiction. So for the purposes of creative writing, we have a number of different categories here. So we have general fiction, nonfiction, biography, children's, fantasy, historical fiction, horror, magical realism, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a bunch of different documents that you can hone in on to make your writing more aligned with the expectations of your genre. And basically the way that this works is that our team puts in thousands and thousands of texts in fantasy, in romance, et cetera, and compares trends across all of those. So when you're looking at the suggestions here, these bands basically show you what the specifics for your type of text are. So if you are if you're writing fantasy, they recommend this band for your readability grade, a score of 8 or lower. This document is scored a 10, so we need to move that down, right? So it's telling you that you are outside of kind of the band of text that we've compared to for your specific genre. So if you are here working with goals, again, when you're kind of trying to read this, the little band tells you the target area for your particular genre, and then you can see where you fall in either inside or outside of that. So when I use Prowritingaid on my fiction writing, I come in here and I will typically run my real-time report, and then I often come straight to my goals because this is how I can tell what I should work on. I can come and I can see at a snapshot for my particular genre what I am, again, doing great at. So this document actually is pretty solid on passive voice. It's pretty solid on complex paragraphs. I don't have very many long sentences, which is awesome. But I am, way outside on the use of dialogue tags. I'm way outside on the use of unusual dialogue tags. So this kind of tells me these are the areas that I should start to focus on. I have way too many dialogue tags with adverbs. So that might be an area that I want to come and spend my copy editing time on. So it's really, really helpful to come in here to, again, just get a snapshot of where you need to focus, because I find, particularly as a fiction writer, a lot of times when I come into a document, I just have no idea where to start. And so coming in here and running the real-time report and checking out the goals for your particular document type will help you see where to start. Now, if you have found, Nikki says, oh Lord, the dialogue tags. Yes, I put them everywhere and I love to use adverbs rather than make the sentence more just like descriptive. So this is a real bad habit of mine. So if you are not seeing goals for whatever reason, there should be a little left-hand arrow, and you need to make sure that you're in the web editor in order to see them with the premium version. So again, if you have any questions, I'm keeping an eye on the chat, but it's easiest for me if you drop them into the Q&A box so I can check them out at the end. Okay, so again, this is one of those things that can really improve your writing and take it from amateur to more professional. Dialogue tags are often overused, particularly by amateur writers. And so by removing those or replacing, again, something where they shouted loudly or something like that, by letting the dialogue speak for itself, it makes the writing overall stronger. So you can see suggestions like this that'll, again, tighten up your prose and make it more engaging for your reader. If you have any if you have an area that you want to focus on, so for instance, unusual dialogue tags, all you have to do is hit the report. It will run the specific report for that type of suggestion. So for instance, exclaim is one of the unusual dialogue tags I have here. And then I can make changes based on that. So again, I was here in my goals back in real time. And all you have to do is, again, hit one of the reports that you want to work on. So pacing, for instance, and it'll take you to that specific report to give more information. So it's really helpful. You can not only see, again, where you're kind of out of the suggested range, but then also you can click on that to see how to make it more effective. Now, a couple things to note before we keep going. So in all of these goals, as well as in your suggestions, you'll notice a little orange eye here in the right-hand corner. This orange eye opens up articles that explain why we are making these particular suggestions. So if you're like, hey, I actually haven't seen anyone tell me anything about dialogue tags, this article will tell you exactly why you should do that. Now, somebody was saying, that they, don't see this suggestion very often. Here, we've actually run a chart of kind of all of the dialogue tags and how frequently they appear. So you'll notice for all of these suggestions that some of them do appear, right? But it's about frequency. So it's not about, and even if we look at this range, it's not about getting them down to 0. It's just about getting into the kind of frequency that's recommended for this particular goal. So again, all of the suggestions that you'll see in Prowritingaid are for the most part suggestions. And I really find these orange eye and these articles really helpful for understanding, is this something that I need to change, or is this something that is actually okay? Again, dialogue tags is a great example of something that is not technically wrong. However, it can be really helpful to reduce, remove, or replace those dialogue tags because they can get distracting if you're overusing them, right? So dialogue tags should not be distractions. They should be almost like signposts. And if you're using kind of non-standard ones really, really frequently, it can end up getting more distracting. Or again, kind of taking away the power from your dialogue itself. So if you ever have a suggestion that you're not sure about, again, hitting that little orange eye will help you understand. You can also click through from any of those suggestions into a full long article that will give you some more details about the suggestion. And typically those are also accompanied by videos that will walk you through it. I like my dialogue tags too, Nikki, I hear you. Now they're not just, those little orange eyes are not just found in the goals, they are also found here in the suggestions themselves. So we write thousands and thousands of articles about each and every single suggestion, which tells you, again, why that suggestion exists, and then helps you make a choice about it, right? So you can come in here, you can find the suggestions, you can decide whether or not you want to use it. So to give you an idea of what my process looks like when it comes in here, I will come in, as I said, I will go through my real-time report. I will often do my goals over here. And then I'll also spend, again, a lot of time with this real-time checker. So some of the suggestions made here in the real-time checker in relationship to style are some of the suggestions that I have found the most effective in improving my writing. So here, for instance, we have a suggestion on how to improve readability by just eliminating redundant words, right? Something here as well. There's oftentimes something where I will, like we had with the bright and brilliant before, where I will either use kind of weak adjectives, where I will use redundant adjectives, where I will say things that are redundant, like many different is redundant. I don't need to say that. It makes it much more effective to just come in here, find all of the places where I have, again, just said something that I really don't need to say, and that I can really tighten up and make more effective. So I will often come in and use the real-time report. I'm going to highlight a few more of the fiction reports in a bit, but I also just want to show the sticky sentences check because I saw some other people sharing it, and this is a big crowd pleaser. So if you're not familiar with the sticky sentences check, the kind of principle behind this is that every sentence has two types of words, working words and glue words. Working words are the essential words in the sentence, nouns, verbs, adjectives, words that make the sentence make sense. So for instance, in the sentence, Haley's cat sleeps, if I change cat to dog, the meaning of the sentence changes. If I change Haley's to Nikki's, the sentence changes, all that type of stuff, right? So those are working words. Glue words are all of the other words in the sentence that make the sentence stick together. Conjunctions, articles, all of those other words that make the sentence make sense, but we tend to overuse them. So oftentimes as writers, we will say things, particularly in a first draft, that are way more complicated than they need to be. So our sentences are too long. It's almost like our readers are just kind of like wandering around. Now, I will come back to this because I saw somebody in the chat talking about how they like long, kind of winding Dickensian prose, which is great. But I will say for some of us, that is not the intention, right? Some of us, this is just a bad habit where it happens. So the sticky sentences check finds sentences where you have over 60% glue words. And that kind of gives you an indication that the sentence is overly long and kind of filled up with a bunch of words that make it a little bit less engaging to use. So you can highlight the sentence. It will tell you how many glue words are in it. I actually have a preview of this right now. We're starting to suggest some rewrites for sticky sentences, but if this is not live in your version yet, you can do a couple things. You can either rewrite it yourself, or you will also see in your existing versions all of the glue words that you can kind of reduce, remove, or replace. So it makes it so much easier. It cuts down your sentences and lets you get right to the point. And again, this is something that a lot of writers kind of have as a bad habit, and really can kind of improve your writing. And it's something that you don't even think about. Another couple of reports that I use in fiction writing all the time are the echoes check. I don't know if anyone else does this, but when I am writing, I get like descriptions stuck in my head. And so I will describe the love interest's eyes as turquoise like 400 times in a chapter. I'll just be like, oh, his turquoise eye is like reflected here. And it's like, Haley, just stop, like use a different word. So the echoes check will come in here and it'll find all of the places that you have close repeats. You can also run the repeats check to see all of your repeats. But again, echoes is something that is a bad habit for a lot of people. And it seems like a lot of folks in the chat are feeling that as well. Repeat words, they set off this, again, they're not technically incorrect, but they set off this kind of like alarm bell in your reader's head that's like, I just read this, I just read this, I just read this. And it's so funny to see how much that can take someone out of it. To give you an example, a book I just read actually reused a sentence on purpose. They reused a description of something like a previous book, but I was like, oh my gosh, I just read this sentence. It like stuck with me enough that I was like, I can't believe this author is totally reusing this sentence. And so again, that kind of echoes and repeats can really get in the way of, it just takes your reader out of it. And so some people in the chat are saying that this is one of their bad habits. And of those things, again, that Prowritingaid can really help you with as opposed to a traditional grammar or style checker, because these are not incorrect. And it's also not something you're typically thinking about as a writer. It can be really, really hard for you to judge this yourself because you're not focused on it. You're just focused on getting the words on the page. Or like Nicole was saying, you might start writing one night and then come back to it the next morning and forget what you were writing. All of these things are really, really challenging to do as a writer, and you shouldn't be expected to kind of do them yourself. So Prowritingaid can come in and help clear up your copy so that, again, you're not causing that for your readers. Or, you know, when you go and work with a professional editor or like a professional developmental editor, they're not coming and spending a bunch of time saying like, hey, Haley, you've described her eyes as orbs 400 times, like folks are saying in the chat. So they'll find that you've used orbs a million times, and then you can just eliminate those so that your editor doesn't have to write in the notes, like stop using orbs a million times to describe eyes. So yeah, and someone's saying this is one of the biggest complaints I got for my first novel. I apparently do this all the time. And exactly, that's exactly how the repeats and echoes check can help you. They can find those for you so you can remove all of those instances before it even has to get to somebody so they don't have to complain about it. Okay, so that's a basic overview of how the Prowritingaid software works. Again, you come in here, you can upload a document, you can write in Prowritingaid itself, you can copy and paste into it. When you turn on the real-time check, you will get 4 main categories of suggestions. You will also see your goals here on the sidebar, which allows you to go more in depth into all of the different reports. So I think a lot of people ultimately end up just using the real-time checker, but I would highly suggest coming either into the other reports themselves or into the goals here on the right to be able to go really, really in depth. The grammar, style, spelling, passive voice, those will definitely help improve your writing, but things like the slow pacing, dialogue tags, sticky sentences, repeats, all of those will drastically improve your writing as well. Okay. I'm going to show a couple quick things before we get into some of my favorite fantasy specific texts. So let's see. One of the best things about Prowritingaid is that you can work where you write. So I have Prowritingaid right now in Google Chrome as the Chrome extension. And so I'm writing in Wattpad. I don't know if anybody else writes in Wattpad or in AO3 or fanfic. I don't know if anyone still writes in fanfiction.net, but wherever you write, if you're writing fanfiction, you can come in. If you're in Medium or anything like that, Prowritingaid, the Chrome extension will work exactly there. So you can come in and you can see all of the same suggestions that we just had are here in Wattpad itself. So you can come, it's already integrated. It already, again, gives you all of the same exact suggestions that we just had over there in the main document here as well. If you're in WordPress, again, Medium, all of these places where you would be typing online, the Chrome extension allows you to get all of those suggestions exactly where you are. Twitter, same thing. If you're on Twitter, if you're on Facebook, if you are on, I don't know, what are other social media platforms? If you are on Reddit, you can come in again and get all of these suggestions exactly where you are so that you are not using the wrong version of Scaled, so that you're not sending a tweet that doesn't make any sense unless that's your goal. And you get, again, all of those suggestions. If you are a fan fiction writer, I would highly recommend doing this. I see a bunch of people in the chat saying that they do that. They publish on Wattpad, fan fiction, etc. Whether it's fan fiction, original fiction, etc. Again, having this tool in Chrome makes it so much easier for you, whether you're writing there in the first place or coming back and writing later. Again, all the suggestions right where you edit. Then you can also do this. I'm going to show you the Google Docs extension now, and then we'll talk about Scrivener. I know a lot of people have questions about Scrivener and Word. So the Google Docs, it works either as the Chrome extension, or you can add it on into Google Docs and run the kind of full version of Prowritingaid. So it kind of pulls up your exact document that you had in Google Docs. So you'll see I can switch to snow covered. I can switch to itched. I have a redundancy here. So basically I make all of these changes. I hit apply changes and close. And then my document here in Google Docs is automatically switched. So again, I just come into the add-on, hit improve document, and I will get the entire editor just right in Google Docs. I can run every single report that I want to. I can make all the changes I want to. And then as soon as I hit apply changes, it goes back to my document, and those are all there. So it's really, really helpful for you, again, to write basically every single place that you want to do. It makes it so easy. Okay, let's talk about specifically how to use Prowritingaid as a fantasy writer. So Prowritingaid has a ton of different tools to help fantasy writers improve the quality of your writing. Let's look at some of my favorites. So we already talked about custom goals. Again, you can switch to multiple different types of goals. So if you wanted to come in and do, if you're writing magical realism specifically, or if, you like Rochelle and Anne were talking about before, are doing fantasy, but it's also romance, you could come in and run the romance report and just compare against both of those. So that is really helpful. Some other really cool things are that you can change your author that you compare to. So you can select one of dozens and dozens of authors in particular genres to compare your work to. So as I mentioned earlier, I am obsessed with Leigh Bardugo. So I'm going to set this to Leigh Bardugo. And then if I come back to my documents I've saved, then I'm going to, oops, hold on. Give me a second. If I go back to my documents, I will be able to compare my work to Leigh. So let me pull up a sample. And if I come into my summary report, I will be able to see how my writing shows up versus Leigh Bardugo's. So you can see Leigh actually is using more emotion tells than I am. So I should tell her that. And I should be like, hey, bye, Leigh. I'm going to be published. I can also see Leigh has me beaten on my bad adverb usage. So I'm using way more bad adverbs than she is. She typically using quickly. So I guess she's probably talking about how Kaz is going around and stabbing people very quickly in her documents. You can also see the distribution of particular sentence lengths. Again, it's just really, really helpful. And honestly, this is just cool. Like, it's just fun to see how you stack up against particular people in your genre. So again, if you come into your settings, you can, again, change your author. There are dozens and dozens of authors in here from all types of genres. So our Tolkien fans are in here. We had some C.S. Lewis, Sanderson, and McCaffrey, tons and tons and tons of different writers. There are, oh yes, Sarah J. Maas is in here. I am a big Maas fan, so she is in here as well, which is exciting. I feel like she's somebody who might use orbs a lot, so you can see how orbs, your orb usage goes up against her. I believe we have Neil Gaiman in here as well. Oh, we don't. You know what? We'll add Neil Gaiman. That's a great. I can't believe we don't. We have Pratchett. We have a bunch of others. But yes, we can add Neil Gaiman. So lots of different authors to compare to. You can also set your English language. So we have a bunch of different versions of English. Our team, I'm obviously American, so is Michelle, but a lot of our team is based in the UK. Lisa is Canadian, so you can switch your English here and get particular suggestions, which make it really effective. So very, very helpful. You can get custom suggestions that way. So lots of just fun things to play around with. Again, your goals is the first thing. You can switch your author style. You can compare to different authors, which is just so fun. Okay. Another thing that I find particularly helpful for writing fantasy is the pacing check. So pacing check looks at your percentages of slower paced paragraphs. Now, for fantasy writers, I find this particularly helpful. As a fantasy writer, we tend to switch between a number of different settings. We will often have like action scenes or scenes where there are lots of dialogue, but then particularly with fantasy writing, because you're doing so much world building, it's easy to get bogged down in slower pacing. Now, depending on your style as a writer and who your readers are, slow pacing could be totally fine. So if you're one of those people who really likes to write longer longer, more, again, like Dickensian. We've done some like Russian classics reading. Like if you're someone who likes to write in that style, totally fine. Please do that. However, if you're somebody who worries a little bit about your pacing, if you're writing for YA, if you're writing for a younger audience, the pacing check can help you find places where you have slower paced paragraphs. Now, what's really helpful about this is it tells you kind of where this falls in your document. So you might say, hey, this is actually okay because I'm specifically doing world building in this paragraph and doing background setting, and I want to keep this. However, if you are trying to move more quickly and you're like, actually, this is in the middle of the battle scene, it's going to take my audience out of it because, they're supposed to move with the action. And all of a sudden I have 4 slow paced paragraphs. It can help you find those and make changes to them. So really, really helpful to make those changes. And everybody, I keep seeing people in the chat talking about different writers, post them in the Facebook group and we will get right on, adding those. It's not intentional if any author isn't in there, and we'd always love to add more. So please feel free to drop them in the Facebook group and we can get our team working on adding some of those in there. Okay. So again, the pacing check is really, really helpful, again, specifically for fantasy writers, because we do so much world building and because we do so much shifting between action and that kind of establishment of the world, establishment of the norms of the world. The pacing check can help you, again, get more information about whether that was intentional or potentially just a bad habit that you can go and fix. Okay, another thing that I love to use as a fantasy writer in particular is the sensory report. So the sensory report looks for indications of all 5 senses in your writing. This is so important to making your fantasy worlds come alive. The best fantasy worlds are ones that you can not just see, but that you can touch, taste, smell, hear as well. So, I think like Harry Potter is a great example. The, Bertie Bott's every flavor beans, right? Like we can taste those. You can taste vomit, you can taste the earwax bean. You have that sensation. I feel like all of us, if you've read Harry Potter, you've been like, I really want a chocolate frog or like a butter beer, and the fact that world has such strong language around taste really makes it more effective. Same thing with touch and sound, right? And hearing, all of those senses are so important to making your worlds feel more realistic. Now, this is something that we as writers often don't think about. Again, it's not something that's incorrect, but it's often not something that we prioritize. And we really heavily tend to skew towards sight. A lot of times as writers, we will skew towards sight. You can see this sample document skews very, very heavily towards sight. So you can come in here, you can see where you have sensory details, where you don't have sensory details, and you can add in or remove some that don't make sense. So again, this is so, so important, particularly for fantasy writers, as you want to make a realistic and effective world. Okay, another great thing about Prowritingaid is that it has customizable dictionaries. So I think I had Heimdall in here before. If you have a word, I'm just in the wrong report. So if you have a word in here that is, I guess I thought I had already added Heimdall, but no. If you have a word in here that is unique to your fantasy world, you can add it to your dictionary, which allows you to customize that so it doesn't show up as incorrect anymore. So it's really, really helpful, again, particularly for so many of us who are writing new worlds, who are coming up with languages, all of that type of stuff. You can customize your dictionary so that it's no longer showing up incorrect. And you can actually even build more custom style guides that allow you to recognize multiple forms of those words if you'd like as well. Okay, author comparisons we covered. Again, those are so great. And if you have more suggestions, please put those into the Facebook group and we're happy to help. Okay, ability to write wherever you write. So I already showed you that Prowritingaid works right in Wattpad, it works right in WordPress, it works right in Medium. You can edit exactly here. You can also use Google Docs, as I mentioned. The Chrome extension, which is what's letting me work in Wattpad, works in Gmail, it works in Twitter, it works basically everywhere that you're writing online, which is so useful. We also have a number of other different integrations. So Our Word integration basically brings the entire full work of the ProWritingAid reports into Microsoft Word. We have this for both PC and Mac. So if you are a premium user, you can get the ProWritingAid reports just right in Word, and it lets you pull those up and get all of the features we just talked about in Word itself. We also have a desktop app, which drastically expands the number of files you can use. So if you are a Scrivener writer, which I know many folks are, our desktop app reads and writes Scrivener files. So you can basically open your Scrivener file in our desktop app, run all these reports, save it, and then open it again in Scrivener, and all of the suggestions are there. I think Lisa mentioned that we are working on getting it directly in Scrivener itself, which hopefully will come in the next couple of months or so. But for right now, we can open and edit all Scrivener files. Again, you basically just open it in ProWritingAid, save it, and all of the changes appear in Scrivener, which makes it super useful. And yes, you can find the goals in Word as well. Okay, some other specific things that we have are resources. We are huge fantasy nerds here at ProWritingAid. It is, as I've said like a million times, definitely my preferred genre. So we try to make content for fantasy writers as much as possible as well. So obviously this week, Fantasy Writers Week is one of them. If you're a ProWritingAid premium member, you also get access to a library of ebooks. So we have some specific ebooks on creating heroes, on publishing, and then we have one specifically on world building for fantasy writers. So all of this content is super, super useful. Again, it's just kind of an added bonus that comes with your premium subscription. We have tons and tons of webinars, and then also all of the recordings for Fantasy Writers Week, and just dozens and dozens of blog articles as well on all of this. So I want to talk a little bit, and then we'll have time for how ProWritingAid can fit into your process. So as I mentioned, I am a writer. I've been writing professionally for over a decade. I write for work, and then I also write for fun and to hopefully publish a book someday, or a fiction book someday. I've published nonfiction. So I want to talk a little bit about how I use ProWritingAid. So I use ProWritingAid daily as I write emails and blog posts for work. I use the Chrome extension or the real-time checker or whatever version. I just have it up and I have it checking my writing as I'm going. I also use it during kind of the copy editing stage for longer form writing that I'm doing, whether that's fiction or nonfiction. For that, I specifically don't turn on the real-time checker until I'm ready to write. So I know a lot of people have asked about when you should do it. So if I am writing fiction, I will keep real time off because I am very precious about my fiction writing, and I cannot handle how software tell me that there are like changes to make, or else I would never write anything else. I would just stop and angst about it. So when I'm writing fiction, I keep all of that turned off until I'm ready to make copy edits. Then when I'm ready to make copy edits and I specifically sit down to edit, I turn it on, and then I start working through my suggestions, and I go through, again, the real-time checker, or I go through the goals bar over here, or I'll typically go through both. So either way, I will, again, if I'm writing blogs, emails, etc., I will do that as I will have these suggestions as I'm going. If I'm writing fiction or something longer form that I feel a little bit more precious and sensitive about, I'll turn it off until I'm ready to go. And I just saw somebody said that they don't use Chrome anymore. This extension also works in Safari and Firefox. So we have specific versions for that as well. So if you are in Safari or Firefox, you can still get the extension too. Okay, all of that being said, I'm going to take a sip of water and then let me get into some of the questions. I know we have a ton. We have an Edge extension as well, Lou. Okay. All right, let me see some of these questions. Oh my gosh, we've got so many. We do have a hard stop at 5 because there's another session later. So if I don't get to your questions, come back to the Facebook group and I will answer those there. All right, let's see. Oh my gosh, so many good questions. So William asks, Michelle, can you make sure to drop the discount link in there again? Again, we'll talk about the discount first because it is very important. 40% off yearly or lifetime. If you can afford the lifetime, it is a very, very good deal. It covers all updates of the software, all versions of the software forever. So it's a hugely good deal if you can get that. And let me just drop the link in. And then if you can't, yearly is 40% off, or again, you can just start for $20 for monthly. Okay, questions. William asks, I would like to use Prowritingaid for my editing business. Is that a good idea, or is it possible? Yes, William, it's totally a great idea. We actually have a lot of professional editors who use Prowritingaid for their editing clients. Sometimes they'll come in and they will run the summary report, which is here, which basically just goes through the entire document, and they will like even print this out. There's a print button here, and they'll just give it to their clients to work with them. We work with a ton of different editors at First Editing who all use Prowritingaid for their business. It's very, very useful for the copy editing part of your business. Okay. Yes, you can use this with Mac, and you can use Scrivener for writing and then for editing as well. Like I talked about, I know a number of people have asked about that. Okay, let's see. So the consistency check, which a couple people have asked for, looks for consistency in terms of spelling, hyphenation, capitalization, quote marks, and ellipses. This is really useful if you are spelling words that you might spell differently in different places. If you are switching, I think some people were saying in the chat, they sometimes switch between like US English, American English, and British English. It'll check for consistency for all that type of stuff, which is really helpful. Okay. The discount code is good until Thursday, so you have a few more days. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Jim asks a question on dismissing particular style selections. Is it possible to disable particular selections rather than the rule itself? So if I want to disable suggesting because of, for, due to, without disabling all of the style suggestions. Okay, good question. So in terms of the way that kind of, without getting too technical, you could disable this rule for very cold air, but you couldn't disable one of the ones within here, if that makes sense. So you could disable like the suggestion for very cold air, but you couldn't disable the like frosty air specifically, if that makes sense. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. And that being said, like a lot of these are very, very, there's like, for instance, like dozens of rules related to passive voice. So if you disabled this one passive voice rule, but we're still seeing passive voice, it's likely because in our, in the back end of our software, we have multiple rules for passive voice depending on context. Okay, so Melina asks, are the underlines color coded? If so, is there a key? Melina, the underlines are not like specifically color coded, and kind of what they mean is different depending on each report. The best way to do it or to figure it out is to look at the report itself and see what the colors are over here. So like blue would be readability, etc. But overall, basically the colors are just kind of like ways of categorizing different suggestions with a report. So within a report, so you don't need to worry too much about them. They're more about like the types of suggestions a particular report offers. Okay. You can choose the type of story you're writing in a couple places. So one is the goals. You can set that here. And then you can also change your document type here in Fantasy, or here from your settings, excuse me. Okay. You cannot see a goal for a specific author. You can see the something for the overall genre list. Okay. Some of the features. Okay, so somebody asked, will some of the features only available with the web version become available in the apps? So the web version and most of our other versions have all of the same features if you are a premium user. So if you're a premium user, you get access to all of the integrations I just mentioned, and you get access to all of the different reports and all of the content in there. You can also edit an unlimited amount of words using premium. If you have the free version, you can basically just use this web editor for 500 words at a time. So that is how that works. The Chrome extension has basically most of these suggestions have a way to, let's see, there's like a little dot here that allows you to pull up the full thing. So if you're not seeing it, it's likely because you're just missing, if you're like in the Chrome extension, you've got to pull it up down here and you can hit open the full editor to get the full features. Like I mentioned, if you're using Google Docs, let's see. Oh, I should click the wrong one. If you're using Google Docs and you do improve document, you pull the same thing, and same thing with Word. All of the reports are available in Word as well. Okay, Margaret asks, how would you use Prowritingaid to optimize your script writing? Is that not possible? It is possible. One of our document types is script. So there will be specific suggestions for scripts as well. And you can upload final draft files as well if you are working with scripts. Nope, lifetime is not the only option as premium. You can also do monthly or annual, though the discount is only for monthly or annual or annual or lifetime. It's not for monthly. Yeah, final draft and Prowritingaid. It's amazing. Okay. A few folks have asked, is the web editor more in depth? It's not at all. Again, you just have to, depending on which particular version you're on, there's a different way to open it. So again, the Chrome editor typically has a little green dot or orange dot, which allows you to open the full thing. Google Docs, it's in the add-on here. The Word, basically everywhere else you go. It's great. It is usable on multiple devices. So if you have one Prowritingaid license, you can use it on all of the computers you have. I use it on 4 different computers right now. It's a per user license, not a per computer license. Okay, Chris asked to talk about the plagiarism check. I can. So the plagiarism check is available for Premium Plus. It checks 2,000 words at a time. And it checks for basically words that, phrases that are aligned with published text as well. So it is only for Premium Plus, and it only selects 2,000 words at a time. So just keep in mind if you actually, if that is something that you need or not. Premium Plus is a slightly higher fee than Premium itself. Okay, let me see. We've got so many questions. There are goals for memoir writing. Yes, Amanda, that's here under creative. You can do it as creative nonfiction. I believe we have another memoir somewhere as well too. Okay. Yes, Jeff asks, is there a way to add whether a custom word is singular or plural? Yes, you can do that. Michelle, could you drop the style guide blog article into the chat? The style guide is the way to create much more kind of custom rules that you've had. Newton has the best comment of the night, which is that I've canceled Grammarly and gotten a Prowritingaid lifetime. So glad to hear it, Newton. I know a couple people have asked about the difference between Grammarly and Prowritingaid. I would say, I think Michelle dropped the link into the chat before. Grammarly is, I think, very, very good at basic corrections and like a lower level, not necessarily lower level, almost a higher level of corrections. We go very deep, like we are very, very deep. And Grammarly is kind of a little bit more surface level and broad. So I would say like Prowritingaid, particularly if you're a fiction user, is just unparalleled for the types of content that you can get and improve. Linda asks, can I use this software as my main writing software rather than Word? You totally can, Linda. I will say there's a couple things that Prowritingaid is better at and not better at. So if you're formatting a ton, you can format in Prowritingaid, but I think it's better to format in something like Word or Scrivener or something like that. I think the format is just much better there. I will also say our checks, our reports require an internet connection to use. So if you want to write offline, I would definitely write somewhere else. I will also say that the way that our reports work is, first of all, we don't store any data. I know some people have asked that. We take privacy incredibly seriously. We don't store any of your data, and we can't access any of your writing. But the way our reports work is basically when you send our report or send your document to our servers to check, and then it like comes back. It takes a lot of time if you have a very long document. So people always ask, like, how much can I write at once, or can I edit at once? Why is it like taking so long on 100,000 words? It's just because there is a lot of content to go through. So if you have an hour to wait for it to check all the 100,000 words, you could, but I highly, highly recommend doing smaller chunks at once. I say like 10,000 words at a time. I personally tap out at 5,000 words in an editing session, or my brain starts to get a bit mushy. So just think about what's the best for you, right? Think about what you can realistically edit in one session, and I would go with that. So again, all that being said, you can use it as a word processor, but it does require an internet connection. And again, like I would say, I would suggest writing somewhere else and bringing it here to edit, because for those reasons of length, and for the reasons of formatting. But then again, you can make all your changes here and kind of move it somewhere else. Though you can totally use it as a word processor. I honestly think other things do word processing specifically better. And because Prowritingaid works in something like Google Docs or Microsoft Word, you can just write it there and then get Prowritingaid there too. Okay, I'm gonna have time for maybe 2 more questions. And then again, like I said, more than happy to keep answering questions in the Facebook group. You can also feel free to email me personally. It's haley.milliman@prowritingaid.com. Michelle, if you want to drop my email in there, you can as well. More than happy to answer any questions. If you have anything that would be good for the whole group, please put it in the Facebook group. Because it's good for everybody to see it. But if there's anything personal you want to review, or anything you just want to talk with me one-on-one about, please feel free to email me. Okay, so Julia asked a good question. Would you say that this software, if used correctly, would be enough for editing novels, or should it be considered one of the steps of editing? I strongly believe for a novel that this should be one of the steps of editing. And that is because Prowritingaid does not do developmental edits. It cannot tell you if your character is well-rounded. It cannot tell you if your plot has a hole in it. It cannot tell you if your setting is kind of silly. Like, it can't tell you those things. It's very, very good at copy editing, and it's very, very good at the how and the mechanics of your writing. It can tell you if you have overused the word orb, but it cannot tell you if like your world shouldn't have orbs in it in the first place, right? So I would highly suggest using this as the copy editing stage, but it should be a part of your overall writing process. And again, it's really helpful if you're using a developmental editor to use this first, then send the polished manuscript to your developmental editor so they can tell you whether or not your world should no longer have orbs in it, instead of, coming and being like, Haley, why did you write orbs 500 times? They can focus on the questions that matter. Okay, let's see. I'm going to see the word orb basically everywhere. Yeah, Sarah, definitely do it if you want to send it to an agent. Okay, so Lindsay asked, why would you use Wattpad and not just Prowritingaid? So Wattpad, oh my gosh, guys, the orb comments, they're so good. So Wattpad is publishing to an audience. And so using Wattpad allows you to publish and connect with other writers. And so basically a lot of the different writing software ends up serving its own purpose. Scrivener is amazing for word processing, for organizing longer documents, and all of that type of stuff. So it's really great. Oh, and Johnny asked, can you use Scrivener for reports chapter by chapter? Yes, Johnny, you definitely can. And I would suggest doing chapter by chapter, not the novel as a whole. Whew, okay, this was so much fun, all. Thank you so much for all of this. I know that there's still like 40 open questions. Again, we have a surprise session at the end of this tonight with the Science Fiction and Fantasy Association, which I'm so excited about. I need to eat dinner before we do that. So thank you all so much. Please email me. Please come to the Facebook group and ask questions. And again, if you are able to upgrade to Prowritingaid Premium, Michelle is dropping the links in the chat. I highly suggest it. You will not regret it as a writer. And also it truly does help us out, and it helps us be able to run these sessions and to be able to prove to the company that these sessions are valuable and that they can help the company, and it lets us keep bringing them to you for free. So thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day. I will catch you in 55 minutes to hear from the SFFA panel. Bye, everybody.